It started with a typo, or maybe fate. In the blur of a Wednesday morning where the nanny quit without notice and his assistant had bronchitis, Carter Ashford made the mistake that would upend 3 years of perfectly managed distance. He was stirring almond butter into a bowl of oatmeal for his son Liam, who was dramatically refusing to eat anything without dinosaur-shaped sprinkles. The toddler, nearly 4 and fiercely independent, sat cross-legged on the kitchen island, clutching a plastic T-Rex in one hand and a spoon in the other. There was a deal to close in under an hour, 2 calls already blinking on hold, and a third text coming in from the agency. He skimmed it quickly and tapped the contact they provided for the replacement sitter. He didn't even think before sending the message. "Hi, this is Carter, just confirming you're good to watch Liam today. He's a little particular about snacks and doesn't like loud noises. Let me know if you need the gate code." He hit send, then moved on, poured coffee, ignored the ache behind his eyes, and switched to CEO mode. What he didn't expect was the reply 15 minutes later. "Carter." Just one word, but it landed differently, like an echo. His thumb hovered over the screen. The name on the contact simply said Grace Sitter, but something sharp flared in his chest. That name, that voice in his head. He hadn't said her name out loud in 3 years, not since she'd left him standing in the rain outside her apartment, soaked to the bone and too proud to beg her to stay. He stared at the text, then at Liam, who was now using the spoon as a catapult for blueberries. "Yeah, babysitter agency sent your contact. Are you not the right Grace?" There was a pause, a long one. He could feel it even through the silence. "I think you meant to text someone else." "Okay, sorry to bother you, wrong Grace." He closed the app, put the phone down, but the chill had already crept in. It wasn't just the wrong Grace, it was her. The Grace who had once known how he took his coffee before he did. The Grace who had loved Liam before he was even born. Who had disappeared when Carter needed her most, when everything started to fall apart. She had left without explanation, only a note on the counter and a hollow where her laughter used to live in his apartment. He hadn't reached out, hadn't chased. There were things he'd told himself, reasons he accepted, that some people couldn't stomach grief, that maybe she'd seen too much of his worst. He became a father alone. His world narrowed to boardrooms and nap schedules, to staying ahead because losing control was never an option again. But now she'd answered, after all this time. The next sitter arrived late. Carter barely made it to his office, and the day spun out in a frenzy of meetings, numbers, and distant distraction. The echo of her name lingered. By evening, he was back home. Liam was asleep early, exhausted from a tantrum over bath bubbles. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that made Carter feel the size of the space. High ceilings, polished concrete floors, nothing out of place except for a forgotten sock under the couch and a trail of crushed crackers. He sat with his phone for a long time, scrolled to her contact. His finger hesitated. Then slowly he typed, "Out of curiosity, how did you know it was me?" He didn't expect an answer, but she replied almost instantly. "You still write the same way, direct, a little bossy, and no one else calls their kid Liam except the Carter I knew." That Carter, the one before, the one who'd believed in second chances and full hearts. He swallowed hard. "I didn't realize your number was still in my phone." "Neither did I." He stared at the screen, feeling the ache settle in deeper now. He should delete the thread, let it end there. But something pulled at him, nostalgia, regret, maybe just the quiet truth that he wasn't as over her as he pretended. "How are you?" he sent finally. The dots appeared, then disappeared, then came back. "Good, working with kids again. Moved back to the city last year." That hit him like another wave. She was here, not in Portland like he'd last heard, not a memory, flesh and blood somewhere in this city. He didn't reply, not yet. He tucked the phone into the couch cushions and pressed the heels of his palms into his eyes. That night sleep didn't come easy, not because of deadlines or toddler nightmares, but because for the first time in years her voice had come back. Not in dreams or memories, but real, close. The next morning he meant to ignore it, to chalk it up to coincidence. But when he typed a quick thank you text to the actual new sitter, he caught himself writing it the same way, precise, a little clipped. And he wondered if she would have said the same thing again. By Friday, he hadn't messaged her again. He told himself it was the right thing, but her number sat in his phone like a doorway left ajar, and it turned out Grace wasn't done yet. Saturday morning came, bright and early, with Liam bouncing on his bed asking for pancakes and cartoons. They were halfway through breakfast when his phone buzzed. "I was thinking about what you said, about snacks and loud noises. I remember he hated the blender." He blinked, his heart knocked against his ribs. "You remember that?" "I remember everything. It wasn't the baby that scared me. It was the way you looked at me like I was the only one who could hold your world together." He stared at those words. She'd never said that back then, not when they were falling apart, not when she packed her things and left him alone with a baby not yet born. The spoon slipped from his hand and clinked against the table. Liam looked up, "Daddy." Carter forced a smile, "Just dropped something, bud." But inside, everything he thought he'd buried started to move again, and he wasn't sure if it was a mistake or the beginning of something he'd never finished. He picked up the phone again, his hands shook slightly. "Maybe we should talk." This time she didn't reply right away, and maybe that was the most honest thing of all. It rained the day they met again. Not a dramatic storm, just a soft drizzle that made the pavement shine and the air smell like late spring. Carter hadn't told anyone, not his assistant, not the new sitter, not even his brother who usually pried into everything. He just picked a coffee shop in Midtown, texted her the location, and sat by the window 30 minutes early pretending he wasn't anxious. He watched the door more than he read his emails. The barista offered to warm his muffin 3 times before giving up. When she finally walked in, he didn't see her at first, just caught the slight turn of her head, her eyes scanning, a familiar nervous habit of tugging her coat tighter around her ribs even though it wasn't cold. She hadn't changed much, still wore practical boots, hair pulled half up like she hadn't decided whether she cared, but her face had more stillness to it, like life had asked her to carry weight she never anticipated. Grace caught his eye and paused. For a moment he saw something flicker, hesitation, maybe grief, but then she walked over and sat across from him just like that. No hug, no casual smile. "Hi," she said. "Hey," he replied, his voice low. A heartbeat passed between them. The coffee shop was quiet, some acoustic guitar hummed through the speakers. "You look tired," she said, with a trace of dry humor. He managed a breath of laughter. "That's permanent now, comes with the territory." Grace looked down at her hands, folded on the table like she was holding something fragile. "I wasn't sure if you'd still want to meet." "I wasn't sure either," he paused, "but then you said you remembered the blender." Her mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile. "He was so tiny back then. He used to flinch every time I made a smoothie." Carter stared at her, the weight of memory thick in his throat. "He asks about you sometimes. He doesn't remember your name, just this idea of someone who used to sing to him at night." She looked up and her eyes shimmered before she blinked it away. "I didn't leave because of him." "I know," he said it quietly, "but I still needed you and you left." Grace leaned back slightly like the words pressed into her. "I was scared, Carter. You were unraveling, everything was moving so fast. Your mom had just died. You had the board breathing down your neck, and then there was Liam and me. You were the one thing that made any of it bearable." "But that's just it," she whispered. "You needed someone to hold everything together, and I didn't trust myself to be strong enough." There it was, truth, raw and late but finally spoken. He rubbed a hand over his jaw. "I didn't need you to be perfect, I just needed you to stay." She looked at him with something tender and pained all at once. "I didn't know how." They sat in the silence of it, not accusatory, just real. Carter finally exhaled, slow and deep. "So why now, why text back?" "I didn't know you'd still feel like this, that I would, but when I saw your name when you called me the babysitter," she gave a small, sad laugh. "It was like I was being offered one last moment to undo everything." He didn't say anything for a while, just watched the steam curl up from his cup. Grace's voice came softer. "What's he like now, Liam?" Carter smiled then, real and warm in a way he hadn't in months. "Smart, stubborn, loves dinosaurs, wants to be a paleontologist. He made me build a whole sandbox just so he could dig for fossils." Her smile bloomed across her face, real enough that it ached. "He sounds incredible." "He is." And then something braver flickered behind her eyes. "Can I meet him?" Carter hesitated, not because he didn't want to say yes, but because it felt like crossing a line. A thick one, drawn years ago in pain and absence. But then he saw her, really saw her, not just the woman who left, but the woman sitting here now, carrying her own quiet guilt, choosing to show up. He nodded. "Come to the park with us tomorrow. It's a Sunday tradition. Slides, dinosaurs, and bribery in the form of apple juice." Grace laughed softly. "You still bribe." Parenting is mostly negotiation. The next day she stood by the swings when they arrived. Liam, wary at first, clung to Carter's leg until she pulled a dinosaur from her bag, an old, battered plastic stegosaurus she must have found somewhere. Maybe even one of the ones she left behind. "Hi, Liam," she said gently. "I brought a friend." Liam blinked up at her, then at the toy. "He's missing a leg." She nodded solemnly. "He lost it in a lava fight, but he's very brave." Carter watched his son's brow furrow, the way he considered this seriously, then accepted the dinosaur with a slow nod. Grace crouched beside him. "Can I sit with you while you dig?" Liam nodded just once. Carter didn't say anything, just stood off to the side watching them, watching his past fold into his present, uneasy but not unwelcome. That afternoon, Liam fell asleep in the car before they even pulled out of the parking lot. Grace lingered at the passenger side door, fingers brushing the handle. "He's kind," she said softly. "I can tell." "He is." "I want to help," she said, "if you'll let me." Carter leaned back against the driver's side door. "Help how?" "Not as a babysitter, I don't know what I mean yet, but maybe just show up, see if I can be part of something again." It would have been easy to say no, safer, easier to keep things sealed up, but she had shown up today. She didn't run, and Liam had smiled in a way Carter hadn't seen in weeks. So he nodded once. "Okay." She smiled, the soft kind that didn't reach her eyes yet, but might someday. As she walked away down the street, rain beginning to fall again, Carter glanced in the rearview mirror at his sleeping son. And for the first time in years, he let himself hope for something more than just surviving. Grace didn't come every day, she didn't push. She didn't ask questions that Carter wasn't ready to answer. She just started showing up quietly, steadily. On Wednesdays, she brought Liam coloring books and sat with him in the late afternoons while Carter took his last meetings upstairs. On Saturdays, she met them at the farmer's market, walking beside the stroller with a paper cup of chai, her scarf tucked under her chin, the sunlight catching in her lashes when she laughed at Liam's opinions on strawberries. Carter kept waiting for the hesitation to creep back in, for her to retreat, but she didn't. Instead, it was Liam who asked the question first. "Is Grace staying this time?" he asked one night, somewhere between brushing his teeth and the nightly dinosaur story. His voice was quiet but not fragile, just curious, the way kids are when they sense something they can't quite name. Carter paused mid-page. "What do you mean, bud?" "She was here before when I was littler." Liam looked up at him with his mother's dark, questioning eyes. "Then she was gone." He felt the weight of that question settle into his ribs. "She's back now," Carter said carefully, "and she wants to be around if that's okay with you." Liam nodded, serious as ever. "I like her. She knows which dinosaurs are herbivores." That was the end of it for him. For Carter, it was just the beginning of the knot unraveling. Grace never asked what she'd missed. She didn't ask about the birth, about the long nights of colic, the fever scares, the mornings Carter sat on the floor with Liam in one arm and an investor call in the other, trying not to sound like his life was fraying at the seams. Maybe she didn't need to. Maybe she could see it in the way Carter moved now with more caution, less arrogance. The way he checked Liam's forehead twice during a sniffle. The way he spoke slower with more weight. One evening, after dinner, Carter found her in the kitchen rinsing dishes. She wasn't even supposed to stay, but Liam had fallen asleep on the couch during movie night and she hadn't wanted to wake him. She stood with her back to him, sleeves rolled, her fingers steady in the water. I didn't expect it to feel like this again, she said quietly. Like what? Like a life I almost had, when I wasn't sure I'd ever be allowed to touch again. Carter leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. You don't need permission to care about him. I'm not sure that's true, she said, turning toward him, wiping her hands on a towel. Not after I left the way I did. He held her gaze. Do you think I haven't thought about that? I know you have. I was angry for a long time, not just because you left, but because you didn't let me fight for you. You made the choice for both of us. Grace stepped closer until they were just a breath apart, and if I hadn't, then maybe we'd have ended anyway, or maybe we'd be here just like this, but I would have known we tried. A quiet settled between them, thick with years of words unsaid. I was so afraid of failing you, she said finally, of becoming another person you lost. He looked at her then, really looked. This woman who had once held his entire future in the softness of her voice, who had seen his pain and walked away not because she didn't care, but because it scared her too much. You never had to carry everything, he said. You just had to be there. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was full of reckoning. That night she didn't stay, but her absence felt different now. Not like a goodbye, more like space, like breathing room. The next weekend, Carter invited her to Liam's preschool art show. It wasn't a big event, just a few tables with construction paper masterpieces, cookies on napkins, juice boxes in coolers. But Liam was proud, his little face beaming as he dragged them both to his clay sculpture labeled Triceratops in crooked handwriting. Grace crouched beside him, full of admiration. Did you make this all by yourself? I used so much glue, Liam announced proudly. Carter laughed, watching her beam at the dinosaur like it belonged in a museum. Later, while Liam was off with friends, Carter leaned toward her, voice low. You know, you're kind of stealing my thunder. She arched a brow. Is that so? He used to only want me around. Now he waits at the window for you. She smiled, soft and warm. He's allowed to love more than one person. So am I, he said quietly. Her breath caught just slightly, but she didn't move away. She just nodded once. They didn't kiss, not that day. But something shifted between them, a fragile trust restored one shared moment at a time. Days turned into weeks. Spring deepened into early summer. Grace came more often now, helped pack lunches, fixed buttons, answered emails with Carter late at night when Liam was asleep upstairs and the kitchen smelled like toast and chamomile. One night Carter found her curled up on the couch. Liam snuggled into her side, both of them asleep under the soft weight of a fleece blanket. He stood there quiet, for longer than he meant to. It hit him suddenly how strange it was, how easy it had become to let her back in, but also how deliberate. She wasn't filling space. She wasn't pretending. She was choosing them every day in small, steady ways. And yet there were still shadows in her eyes sometimes. Moments when she drifted, when something passed through her expression and disappeared before he could ask. It was after one of those moments, a sunny Wednesday afternoon at the park, Liam chasing bubbles, when Carter finally said it. I need to ask something. Grace looked up from where she sat on the bench beside him. Back then, he said, his voice low, was there more to why you left, something you never told me? She hesitated, eyes on the horizon, then she nodded. I was pregnant, she said softly, a few weeks. I found out the same week your mother died. I didn't tell you because everything was collapsing and I didn't know what to do. Then I lost it, and I was so angry at myself for being relieved. Carter closed his eyes. His hand found hers on the bench between them, gently wrapping around it. I'm sorry, he said. I wasn't sure you'd forgive me if I told you later, so I didn't. They sat in silence again, but this time it wasn't empty or sharp. Just grief finally named, loss acknowledged, and something new in its place. Grace leaned her head on his shoulder and Carter let it happen. Let her settle there like she never left. Like they were building something again, not by pretending the past hadn't happened, but by finally letting it breathe. In the distance, Liam laughed, wild and free, chasing the light. July came in slow and heavy, the kind of summer that settled into skin and made everything feel drowsy and golden. Carter's days blurred between the office and home, but for the first time in a long time, the weight of his schedule didn't feel suffocating. The difference was subtle. Things still got chaotic. Liam still had meltdowns, meetings still ran long, investors still demanded more than was reasonable. But there was a steadiness now, a rhythm that had returned with Grace. She hadn't moved in and he hadn't asked her to. That would have felt too fast, too presumptive. But she was there. Not just around, but present, showing up on the hard days, picking up groceries without being asked, sitting beside him when the silence grew too loud. They were relearning each other, not as the people they were 3 years ago, but as who they were now, weathered, wiser, still trying. Some nights after Liam fell asleep, they'd end up outside on the small back deck, sharing a bottle of wine while the cicadas hummed and the city exhaled around them. That's where they were when Grace reached for his hand one evening and said, "I think I'm falling in love with you again. But it's different this time. I'm not falling like I don't know the cost." Carter didn't speak right away. He just ran his thumb over the back of her hand, feeling the truth of her words settle between them. "I don't want a version of you that doesn't carry the past," he said finally. "I want the version that stayed through it." She looked at him and he saw it again, the flicker of grief and hope woven together. She didn't cry, but her voice trembled slightly when she said, "I want to believe we can make it right." "We're not trying to make it right," he said. "We're trying to make it real, that's better." After that night something in them clicked, not like a movie scene or a dramatic kiss in the rain, but in quieter ways. He started reaching for her hand more often. She began leaving her toothbrush next to his without comment. Liam started calling her Gracie instead of Grace, and no one corrected him. It wasn't perfect, there were missteps. Like the afternoon Liam had a fever and Carter snapped at Grace for suggesting he skip a meeting. He hadn't meant it. The words came from a place he thought he'd buried: panic, fear, the unbearable vulnerability of watching his son suffer. She didn't storm out, she didn't shout back. She just walked into the kitchen, poured him a glass of water, and handed it to him without a word. Later that night, after Liam's fever broke, Carter found her sitting on the couch, legs curled up beneath her, a book unread in her lap. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know," she replied. "I wasn't angry at you. I know that too." He sat beside her, rubbing his temples. "Sometimes it still feels like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, like I can't relax because if I do, something going to fall apart." Grace nodded slowly. "I've lived that too. It took me a long time to learn that being close to someone doesn't mean being responsible for keeping everything from breaking. It just means you don't face it alone." They stayed there quiet until the city outside went still. Later that week, she surprised him. It was a Thursday. He came home early to find the living room rearranged. The couch faced the window now. A bookshelf had been pulled from the hallway. Liam's art had been framed and hung along one wall. The whole space looked less like a display home and more like someone actually lived there. "You okay with it?" she asked when he stood staring, briefcase still in hand. Carter turned slowly. "You did this. I just thought maybe it was time for the house to look like the people, and it mattered more than the design." He dropped the briefcase and walked straight to her. He kissed her, not tentative, not careful, but with the kind of certainty he hadn't let himself feel in years. Her hands curled into his shirt, and when they pulled back, she looked at him with quiet wonder. "That was long overdue," she whispered. "Yeah," he breathed, "it was." That night they made love with the windows open and the fan humming overhead. No rush, no performance, just skin and trust and breath shared in the hush of the dark. Afterward they lay tangled together, Liam asleep down the hall, the house full of the kind of peace that comes when nothing is being forced. In the following weeks they grew into something unspoken but understood. Carter brought her coffee in the mornings. Grace started leaving notes on the fridge, little reminders, soft jokes, quiet gratitude scribbled in pen. Liam's drawings became messier, happier, his smile quicker to return. One evening, while they were all folding laundry, Liam asked, "Gracie, are you staying for my birthday this time?" Grace's hand paused over a pair of socks. She glanced up at Carter, who gave her a small nod. I was hoping you'd let me, she said. Liam grinned, okay, but you have to wear a party hat. She grinned back, deal. It was a small thing, but it settled something. And yet just as things felt steady, the past knocked again. One Friday morning, while Carter was dropping Liam off at preschool, a woman approached him in the parking lot. She was in her 40s, blonde, dressed in business casual, with a hesitant smile and a clipboard in hand. Mr. Ashford. Yes. I'm from Child and Family Services. We received an anonymous tip regarding your home environment. It's likely nothing serious, but I'd like to schedule a home visit. Carter froze. The words felt surreal, out of place, a cruel joke. My son is fine, he said, jaw tightening. I'm sure he is. These things happen sometimes. It's usually nothing, just protocol. But Carter knew what this was, the timing, the phrasing. When he got home, Grace found him pacing the kitchen, phone clenched in his hand. What happened? He told her every word. Her face went pale. You think it's about me. Who else would file something like this now? His voice was sharp. I'm not careless. I've never been anything but protective. You come back and suddenly someone's questioning if this is a safe home. Her eyes stung. You think I told someone? No, but someone knows you're back. Someone thinks you don't belong here. She took a step back as if the words slapped her. Carter realized too late how it sounded. He reached for her. I didn't mean. No, you did, she whispered, and maybe they're right. He shook his head. Grace. I should go, she said, already turning. This time he didn't stop her. Not right away. Grace didn't come the next morning. Or the next. The silence stretched across the rooms like a cold draft, through the kitchen where her mug still sat in the cabinet, through Liam's room where her voice used to sing softly during bedtime, through the closet where a sweater she'd left behind still held the faintest scent of her shampoo. Carter tried to focus on work on Liam on the upcoming home visit, but everything felt dulled, like he was moving underwater. The fight still echoed in his head, the words he hadn't meant but said anyway. Liam noticed too, kids always do. Where Gracie? He asked on the third day, frowning into his cereal. She needed some space, Carter answered. Did she get lost? The question hit him harder than anything else had. He crouched beside Liam's chair, brushing his son's hair gently back. No, bud, she's just figuring something out. Liam nodded solemnly. Can you tell her I miss her? I will. The home visit came and went. The caseworker was polite, thorough, and clearly embarrassed to be there at all. She left after 30 minutes, assured that Liam was thriving and the environment was not only stable but warm, attentive, and safe. Carter stood at the door after she left, a slow breath sinking through his chest. It was over. But it didn't feel like a win. Later that night, after Liam was asleep, Carter sat in the kitchen with a beer sweating in his hand, the night pressing in against the windows. He scrolled through his phone again, through old texts from Grace. The last one from her was 2 days ago. I'm okay. I just need to think. He hadn't answered, hadn't known what to say. But now he did. They came, everything's fine, but it isn't fine without you. He hit send. This time she didn't answer right away. It took 2 more days. When she finally knocked, it was late, almost 10. Carter opened the door to find her standing there in jeans and a windbreaker, no umbrella, hair damp from the misting rain. She looked tired but steady. I was angry, she said before he could speak, but not because of what you said, because it was the first time I really believed that I did belong here, and then I felt it slipping again. He stepped aside, silent. She walked in slowly, her fingers trembling slightly as she unzipped her jacket. It was my sister, she said. She was the one who filed the report. Carter's brow furrowed. What? She found out I was seeing you again, that I was spending time with Liam. She's always thought I made the wrong decision leaving, and she was scared I was making another mistake going back. She didn't mean to cause damage, but she didn't trust I knew what I was doing. He exhaled, his anger dissipating into something heavier. Why didn't you tell me? Because I thought maybe she was right. Grace moved toward the kitchen, sat on one of the stools. The thing is, the version of me who left you 3 years ago wouldn't have fought for any of this, but I'm not her anymore, and I don't want to leave again. Not because I'm trying to fix the past, but because this messy, real, imperfect thing, we're building something better than what we had. He came to stand beside her, his hand brushing hers. "Do you still love me?" he asked quietly. She looked up. "I never stopped." Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then Carter pulled her into his arms, his fingers in her hair, his cheek pressed to her temple like he was memorizing the shape of her again. When she cried, it was quiet, just relief, grief, and the sharp release of having finally come full circle. They didn't talk about the future right away. They didn't need to. But slowly things shifted. Grace started staying overnight, not every night, but often enough that Liam began putting out a second toothbrush beside hers. Carter introduced her again to the people in his life, not as a chapter he'd closed, but as someone who had found her way back. And Grace, in turn, began to unpack her things, her fears, her hopes. She didn't rush it. She knew now that love wasn't about clinging tightly, but about choosing someone even when it's hard. The summer wound down, days growing shorter, Liam's birthday inching closer. On the morning of the party, he bounced around the house in a dinosaur costume, squealing with excitement. Grace was in the kitchen, frosting cupcakes, music humming low from the speaker. Carter stepped into the doorway, watching her work. For a moment, the light caught her profile, soft and golden, and he saw not the woman who'd left, but the woman who'd come back and stayed. She turned and smiled. "What?" "Nothing," he said, walking over, kissing her gently on the temple. "Just thinking how lucky we are." She leaned into him, her voice warm against his shoulder. "We're not lucky, Carter. We chose this." Outside, children were already arriving. Laughter echoed down the block. Inside, the house no longer felt like a place he was trying to keep together. It felt like home. Carter reached for her hand. She took it. And they stepped forward together, not into a perfect ending, but into something better. A beginning that had learned how to last.